I'm Cheryl Jones. I want to thank you for coming. The sixth annual X Conference was held this weekend here at the National Press Club in Washington. Attending were 12 speakers from 4 countries who addressed important matters relating to the extraterrestrial phenomena research and exopolitical activism. I served as the host for this cutting-edge conference. This event is produced by the Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996. It was founded by Stephen Bassett, and his sole purpose in founding this organization was for the resolution of the UFO ET issue through political means. His work has brought 85 speakers and 115 presentations to the nation's capital and has helped raise awareness of the most important and controversial issue in the world today: the engagement of the human race by non-human intelligences, extraterrestrials. On Saturday evening, the PRG Awards were given to the late Richard Hall, longtime researcher, and Brazilian researcher A.J. Gavard for lifetime achievement, to former Arizona Governor John Fife Symington III for political courage, to investigative journalist and researcher Linda Moulton Howe for courage in journalism, historian Richard Dolan for intellectual courage, and also the Disclosure Award went to UK police officer and researcher Gary Heseltine of the United Kingdom. Entrepreneur Dennis Briefer received a special award for his support to the Paradigm Research Group, and all awards are in the context of research in the extraterrestrial phenomena and exopolitical activism. At this time, I'd like to bring forward PRG's Executive Director, Stephen Bassett.
First of all, I think it's important to mention that I have some concerns because this morning we learned that, by sheerest coincidence, the White House announced, I believe they're holding a press conference at exactly 10 a.m. at the White House regarding, I think, the announcement of the next Supreme Court nomination. And I am concerned about this because, given that most of the political reporters in town would be here covering what is easily the most significant news story of all time, that there might not be anybody to cover the nomination press conference at the White House. So I want to apologize to the White House if they in fact are unable to get that covered the way they should have. A slight correction: there will be, if there's press that are here that need this press release, will be available probably right over here. Just take it. There's one change to it. The people that will be following me with some announcements, there are no press releases here on that, but in fact, and that's good. But we will in fact follow up over the next few days with press releases on each of their comments. All right, now, essentially, this is the 6th X conference, and we've held a press conference after each one at the National Press Club. This year, the entire conference was held at the National Press Club. That's news because that has never happened before. There have been a number of press conferences, right, like this, regarding the UFO issue. Several of them held in the main ballroom, several of them quite extensive. I know the 2001 May 9th press conference, which is essentially the 9th anniversary, was yesterday. I was there. I think there were 200 people in the room, about 100 public. By the way, that's very unusual for public, that many public, to turn up at a press conference. I guess it indicates the public may be interested in this. And then about 100 press, as well as 17 camera teams. Many of them were foreign press. And there was a great deal actually happening in the background after that May 9th, 2001 press conference by the Disclosure Project, where 75 witnesses, military, some intelligence, FAA, et cetera, essentially discuss their personal engagement with the evidence and the issue, which confirmed what we already knew, that the extraterrestrial presence is real. And unfortunately, only 4 months later, virtually to the day, we had the attacks in New York and Washington. And so that effort stopped. Since then, there have been at least 2 private efforts inside Congress to get some hearings on this. Never been publicized. That may change soon. Still deciding about that. But those efforts were stopped. Reasons are not clear. Now, last year was very notable because there wasn't a major, I think, conflicting press conference. We had a substantial amount of media, including CNN, which live streamed the entire press conference worldwide. We are doing the same today. We are live streaming this press conference, and it will be up on the internet, archived and available. And that link is at x-conference.com, x-conference.com. So anyone can go there and be able to see it for several weeks. But this press conference will also be released to YouTube and so forth, so it'll get around. But at that conference on April the 20th is when a PhD from MIT, and a man who was selected not only to be an astronaut, but to be a Apollo mission astronaut. Fortunate enough, he just missed the Apollo 13, which he was scheduled to do, and did Apollo 14 and walked on the moon as the sixth man. This would be Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Since then, he has founded the Institute of Pneumatic Sciences, recently featured extensively in the world best-selling book by Dan Brown called The Lost Symbol. And also founded Quantrack, which is trying to bring together quantum physicists and similar scientists from all over the world in an effort to explore the quantum connection to consciousness, which is essentially to get at probably the true and fundamental essence of consciousness and how it interacts, thus opening up 1,000 doors to a lot of places. A formidable man. He stood at this platform and called for the Obama administration to end the truth embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence. You know, pretty heavy stuff. He was followed by a wonderful gentleman by the name of Milton Torres, who had been a major in the Air Force serving in the United Kingdom in 1957 under British authority. When a bogey turned up over the channel, the British decided that why send a Brit when you could send a Yank? So they sent Major Torres up to check it out. And as he approached the bogey over the channel, they asked him to shoot it, which concerned Major Torres because, according to his radar, it was the size of an aircraft carrier. And generally, most pilots would prefer not to shoot at planes the size of aircraft carriers if they can avoid it. But before he could take that fateful decision, the aircraft carrier did some rather radical maneuvers and then flew off at great speed. He was very thankful for that, and so he went back to the base in a pretty good mood, got a good dinner, and went to bed. And the next morning, he was met by intelligence, who told him that whatever happened, he would never speak of it again as long as he lived. Now, let me make clear here. The bogey over the channel could be, you know, who knows? It could be a massive flight of birds, the side of an aircraft. Who knows? The fact that he was ordered to shoot at it is interesting, very uncommon. Why do I say that? You see, if you're sent up by a country to intercept an unidentified object and you shoot it, it could be like an Iran airliner, Korean airliner. These tend to create problems diplomatically for the countries involved, not to mention fairly substantial lawsuits. And so you just don't do that unless the situations are interesting. But what is really interesting is under what circumstances and for what reason does a government tell a serving major in the Air Force that you will never speak of this incident again as long as you live? What would be the content of that event? Now, this has happened countless times. Right. And that's, I think, news. If the press would like to engage that, there are probably several dozen thousand members of the U.S. and United Kingdom and French and German military who, if given the opportunity and the green light by their governments, would be happy to tell their Milton Torres story. Last year, though, on April 20 is when Milton Torres, following Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who was also in the military, by the way, he also called for the end of the truth embargo. He asked the administration to do this because he knew what he had gone through, having to keep that to himself his entire life, and that he felt this was wrong for members of militaries who voluntarily, in most cases, offer their lives in service to their country, to have to do that. Interestingly enough, the reason that Dr. Torres had to do that, or I'm sorry, the reason he was able to talk about it was because the United Kingdom, since 1996, has been releasing massive amounts of their UFO files and declassifying them, many of which are pretty innocuous, but of course some of which are quite interesting, like the Milton Torres case. Since they released the files, he could talk about it, and he was interviewed by the press. If the United States were to start releasing its files, as John Podesta asked them to do in this club, in fact, the second time in 2003 at this podium, then we would have a whole lot of more Milton Torres coming forward to talk about this issue. So, 1 year later, the Obama administration has had a difficult time, and I am very empathetic. It's been a tough year for everybody, frankly, but there has been no action on disclosure. So first and foremost, as far as this press conference is concerned, Paradigm Research Group once again calls upon the administration of President Barack Obama to engage the leadership of the military services and the national security structures to essentially work out the details to conduct a formal acknowledgement to the American people of the extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. This is not something the president can simply do. It doesn't work that way. Never has, really. Maybe not since Truman, certainly. Those gentlemen and women down who are protecting our nation in the vast security complexes that we've created have the information. And if they want to go forward, then the president will be able to go forward. If they don't, it is probably not possible. We believe the national security structures want to go forward, and so therefore, if the president makes the effort, it will happen. It is not surprising, or not, I mean, it is therefore not a non-trivial matter that the gentleman who called for the release of all UFO files twice, once in October 22nd, 2002, and again in October 23rd, 2003, after having served for 4 years as the Chief of Staff to President Bill Clinton, and having served as a key advisor to him during the first 3 years of his administration, called for the release of these files, right? And that he has gone on to be the head of the #1 progressive think tank in the United States, the Center for American Progress, as well as a major key figure in the Democratic Party, particularly in the area of deep strategy, which is why he was appointed the co-head of the Obama transition team after President Obama was elected, and why he was the most frequent visitor to the White House in the first 90 days. So there is a sort of a connection here, and the connection goes deeper than that. I just want to take a moment. This is not news yet. It's actually old news in a way. But these are the 1,000 pages obtained by Freedom of Information Act by researcher Grant Cameron, the largest filing of it regarding this material that was made. There were 4 or 5 others. And these documents all come from the Office of Science and Technology Policy during the Clinton administration between January 1993 and late 1996. These documents completely confirm that Lawrence Rockefeller, a billionaire friend of the Clintons, approached the administration and for 3 years engaged the administration in various discussions, as well as meetings, as well as possible research topics. A book was created. Meetings were held at the JY Ranch in Wyoming, attended by researchers, and there was then a meeting attended by President Clinton and his wife, Hillary Clinton, now Secretary of State. And this went on for 3 years. The press knew about it. They didn't cover it. They knew about it going in. They knew about it most of the 3 years. They didn't cover it. About 7 or 8 years later, after a president had, or in 2000, just after the president was about to leave office, the documents were obtained. We then presented these documents to a number of major newspapers. They didn't cover it. And then we put these documents up on the internet a few years ago, not all of them, but the key documents, sent out major full press releases to the press saying, here they are, proving that Hillary Clinton was involved. Here are photos of her and Rockefeller at the ranch. We learned that a book she's carrying at that time in 1995 is Are We Alone by Paul Davies, Philosophical Implications on Extraterrestrial Contact. They didn't cover it, but it's there, right? We got them right here, so we want you to know. And of course, John Podesta knows about these documents because he was fully aware of the Rockefeller Initiative, as was the current Secretary of State. And there is an effort called the Facts on Washington, Million Facts on Washington, has been underway since November the 5th of 2008, right after the election. And in that time, it's now, well, I guess it's 16 months, thousands of letters, faxes, and emails first went into the president-elect, and then the president of the White House calling for the president to do what Edgar Mitchell asked him to do last year, and end the truth embargo. And then since, and probably more importantly, since June the 1st of last year, and we're approaching almost a year now, thousands of letters and faxes and emails have been pouring into the White House Correspondents Association for the White House Correspondents Corps, the press corps rather. That's the group that is over at the White House right now, listening certainly very intently to the Supreme Court nominee, asking them to start asking about this and a whole lot of other stuff, you know, fairly significant questions. So what's interesting about that is that every effort to get a response from the White House or the White House Correspondents Association, meaning, would you tell us about this correspondence, has been rebuffed. They will not return the calls. They will not return the emails. They have nothing to say, which is very, very interesting, including Robert Gibbs, the press secretary, who was asked on C-SPAN a number of months ago about this correspondence. He did not answer. And that's important because Robert Gibbs, because of his position as press secretary, is not only fully aware of all of the letters, faxes, and emails coming into the president and president-elect, but of course he is aware of the letters, faxes, and emails going into the White House Correspondents Association. And the reason that he can't answer is because if he acknowledged at all that the citizens of the United States were in fact querying the White House Press Corps about this, he would then have to answer the next question. Can we see the correspondence? And then after that had been shown to the press, he would then have to answer the next question. Well, what about these questions that they're asking you to respond to? And then he has a problem. And this is how the embargo was made. This is how it's constructed. And the disassembling of this embargo will be the reverse of that, right? Backing it out. And the Press Club has been extremely helpful because they have opened their facilities to this issue. I am a member now, but that doesn't really matter. And a number of major press conferences have been held here, and I really do appreciate this. This press club does truly represent, I think, the fundamental essence of journalism. There is a plaque on the wall in this building, and on it is a quote from Pulitzer, who founded the School of Journalism at Columbia. And so when they dedicated this plaque, they put this quote from Pulitzer on it, and for good reason. And if you find it, and I need to be able to say exactly where it is, but ask the staff, they'll tell you where the plaque is. It was dedicated in 1962 on the 50th anniversary of the Columbia School of Journalism's founding, given to the Press Club. And the very first line of this plaque, which I hope I get right, is probably as important a sentence as you want to know about as a citizen of the U.S. Republic. And it is, our press and the public will rise and fall together. In other words, if the press falls, if it fails, then the republic fails. Right? If the people fail, if they fail to honor the social contract and to serve the Constitution, then the press will fail too, and will go down with the people and their folly. If the two again, work together and do what they're supposed to do, then they will rise. That plaque is important, and it is the motto. I'm going to put this down here. It is the motto for the Facts on Washington. And so the principal announcement that I wanted to make was the calling for the administration to do what it needs to do. My understanding, based upon my 14 years at this, is that the military intelligence community is ready to do this, that it is not a matter of somebody just sending out a memo saying let's do this, but rather requires a proper, responsive executive office that they're comfortable with, and one that they feel that they can deal with and will serve the national security interest. They actually have those concerns, and rightly so. And of course, an executive is willing to open their hand and reach down and say, all right, let's talk, let's get together. I believe the circumstances are there. But it is the nature of government today that the more difficult and important a matter is, the more intransigent the government gets. And we've seen that now so many times repeated that it is almost a cliche. And I appreciate that, because I remember trying to get out of bed to go to high school when I was like 16, and I could barely do it. I understand that. We all do. We know what it's like. But you know, we pay them about $185,000 a year. I think senators get $250,000 a year. And we give them enormous amounts of power, and we give them our votes. I don't feel that it's just too hard to do is going to cut it. So they have to decide if they are representing the people and going to do the tough stuff. And if they can't do that, then I understand why they would want to resign and find and go into other vocations and allow someone else to take their place in the Senate and the House, or as an executive staffer, and take care of the difficult stuff. It's okay. I have no problem with that, right? Now, the other thing I want to announce today, and then I'll get it back to Cheryl, we're on time. This is fairly non-trivial, and I announced this with a certain amount of trepidation, but because of the conference I just went through, I'm pretty sure knocked at least 8 years off my life, which means I'm probably down to about 46 hours. So if you need a loan or something, you want to see me between now and Wednesday, is that the next major project of Paradigm Research Group will be to hold a conference on October 22, 24, and it will be called Contact 2010. It will be the first major conference dealing exclusively with the truly most significant exopolitical issue engaged out there right now. And that is, of course, direct contact between extraterrestrial non-human intelligences and human beings. And this will be the first major conference since the MIT Abduction Study Conference, co-organized by Dr. John Mack, Pulitzer Prize-winning psychiatrist, who was based at Harvard and educated at Harvard, and an MIT PhD by the name of David Pritchard, and this was held on the campus of MIT in 1992. This conference was the focus of a very highly acclaimed book by the late C.D.B. Bryan called Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. The intention is quite simple. It is to put the contact issue in the forefront of the advocacy movement, which is frequently called the disclosure movement. We're going to bring about a dozen individuals here, some of which are world famous, but all of which have very comprehensive memories, not necessarily obtained through hypnosis, but often the case, of their direct physical contact. We're not dealing with psychic contact. Physical contact with non-human beings, and they have the articulation and the ability to speak about it. Not everybody can, and that's understandable, but those who can are the ones I think we need to have speaking to the world, to the press. We will bring them, along with probably 10 of the top researchers in the world, to speak about their experiences, and the researchers will speak about their findings over the last 15 to 30 years on direct contact with extraterrestrials. And they will do it in this press club, 2 blocks from the White House and 13 blocks from the Capitol. I know for a fact there are a number of contactees in the Congress. I know for a fact that the majority of the members of Congress are fully aware that there's an extraterrestrial presence. Probably a majority of the staff are serving at the White House today. These are smart people, wired people. Watch the news, pay attention. That's how they got where they are. They know. This is a charade. This is not a small matter. It's nothing wrong with being wrong. Everybody's wrong. I can assure you we see a lot of that. When more than 50% of serving public servants believe this is true and remain silent while a government says, no, this is true and that is false, you have transcended wrong, and you are now taking a chainsaw to the social contract of the United States. So this conference has a website. It is preliminary, but developing quickly, and it is called contact2010.com. That's all spelled out, right? Contact2010.com. And next year, we're going to hold contact2011.com, along with, in May, X-Conference 2011. And we have other things we're going to do, and we're going to continue at this until the government ends this truth embargo. And they will end it. It is an absolute guaranteed certainty. The only thing that is not certain is, will they conduct themselves in an appropriate and proactive way, or will they be chased down the street by a horde of reporters with clicking pens and cameras screaming questions at their backs as they flee the truth? I do not want to see that. I do not want to see my country act that way. It will not be good for our world position. And I would prefer to see the United States end this embargo because it planned, built, and initiated this embargo. If the People's Republic of China or Russia or another nation goes forward with the proof that they have and initiates the end of the truth embargo, then the United States will have lost its principal way back to credibility. And it will be left with all of the negative historical baggage and none of the, quote, new post-paradigm, post-disclosure assets. And we will be diminished even further. And frankly, folks, I watch a lot of news, and I'm struggling because it's hard to see how we could be diminished further as a nation. And I don't want to see that. It's time to turn around and start going in a positive direction. So that's my comments today. I'm going to turn this back to Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And now I'd like to bring to the podium next Brazilian researcher A.J. Gavard.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you greetings from the entire Brazilian UFO community, my fellow researchers from Brazil, and also from other countries in South America, which are all expecting news when I come back and report what's going on here in Washington and this opportunity. Well, my friends, the world is changing, and is changing fast to accept and openly admit that we have been visited by other species much more advanced than us that for some reason are here visiting us. This is a fact that has been brought by a relentless, almost obsessed work done by UFO researchers worldwide, and also by the weight of the evidence put together of this phenomena. This is undeniable, unquestionable evidence of all sorts of manifestation of alien extraterrestrial spacecrafts, meaning extraterrestrial presence, extraterrestrial intelligence in our planet. We UFO researchers have been speaking about it for almost 60 years. Before us, in this moment, there was our pioneers who did their job in the 60s, in the 40s, in the 50s. We took over in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and we are screaming as loud as possible to our society and to our authorities that we are being visited. This is a fact that has been acknowledged. Now, as we, the civilian UFO researchers, know quite a great deal about this absolute importance topic of our civilization, that we are not alone. There are others who also do have information about it, and they are denying us access to that information. I'm talking about military structure around the world. I'm talking about government around the world who has, such as ourselves, the UFO researchers, been investigating this phenomenon for quite some time, for decades. Like in Brazil, we have information that since the 50s, the UFO phenomena have been officially investigated by the Brazilian Air Force and by other commissions made by, put by the Army and the Navy. It's going on all over the world. Right now, we know that dozens of countries, not only countries that are the top in technology or in culture or in civilization, but also more humble countries in some parts of the world have their committees to officially investigate the UFO phenomena. The amount of information put by all these structures all over the world is just astounding. In Brazil alone, we learned in the last years that there is 12,000 kilos of papers, meaning documents, photos, footage, that undeniably refer to the presence in our environment of other species, as close as they can get, having direct contact with some of us, some of the human beings in this planet, the so-called abductions. They are a reality. Now, in Brazil, we have, as for 204, started a civilian campaign, kind of a petition, to ask our government to come clear about it, to release its files. The files have been produced in so many decades of intense UFO investigation, secret or discreet. This campaign was put by the Brazilian Committee of UFO Researchers, which is a gathering of UFO investigators from several entities, organizations, and also independent, who got together to make this request peacefully, but strongly to our government. This campaign is called UFOs Freedom of Information Now. And I am very proud to say that we, at the Brazilian Committee of UFO Researchers, we have succeeded at a certain point to get a lot of material produced officially by our government released. We have now something between 5,000 and 6,000 pages of official documents produced mainly by the Brazilian Air Force, but also by the Army and some by the Navy, reporting the presence of these other intelligences in our environment. This is very important because, unlike in other countries where there has been disclosures in several levels, in Brazil, this disclosure is a result, a direct result of a civilian campaign. And if we've done this in Brazil, and if we had succeeded, so can any other group of UFO researchers in any other country, I believe. Actually, what Brazil has done has now been emulated by UFO researchers in other countries, such as Argentina, where there's a very active ufology, a UFO community very strong, and also South America. Now, the way this UFO phenomena is seen in our continent, in South America, is very clear. Right now, not only due to this campaign, but mainly because of this campaign in Brazil and other countries, we have top-ranking military from all forces, Navy, Army, Aeronautics, of several countries, come forward. Some still on duty, but most of them retired personnel who get tired of this secrecy, of this truth embargo. And they wanted to come clear about what they know. So every now and then, we get a phone call of someone, some brigadier or general or colonel, saying, now it's my time to say what I have to say, to tell you what I've seen or what I think about it. And we have had the privilege to know and to interview several very important men in our military structure in Brazil who have openly declared, yes, we are being visited by other species. This is a fact that is known by most of the military structure in this country. And there is files in a great amount that has to be opened, that has to be shown to all society. These are words that were expressed to me through the Brazilian UFO magazine by several top-ranking militaries, which will opportunely present it to you. In one of the papers that we got just recently, among the 5,000 or 6,000 pages that were produced through the campaign UFOs Freedom of Information Now, is this one, which states that during a certain period of time in Brazil, when UFOs were being intensively detected by radar, the government, through its military, declared the objects are solid and are under some sort of intelligent control. They are defining precisely what we call a UFO, a flying saucer, if you will, and space vehicle that was created, designed, built by other species in some other planet. And it is used to visit planets such as Earth and I don't know how many others. This is official. This is going on right now. Our authorities know it. And gradually, slowly, of course, drop by drop, this truth is become available. All those 5,000 to 6,000 pages that we have got through our campaign, Freedom of Information Now, is now accessible by everyone in the nation and by every one of you at the National Archives in Brazil, and also in our website, the Brazilian UFO Magazine website, which is ufo.com.br. This is the objective. This is what we wanted. We didn't want this data for the Brazilian UFO researchers, for us, but for the entire society, because it's the society who has to know that it's part of a much bigger thing. Now, our campaign is not ended with this achievement. It still goes on because we realize that what have been given to us at this point is only the tip of the iceberg. We got it. We're very happy that we got so many pages, so many photos, so much material, but we still want more, much more. We won't rest until we get it. We have several strategies to put in place, to put in effect, to guarantee that we gather more material. And this material will go to the public. Now, if we have done this in Brazil, which is now being used as an example by other countries, it can be done anywhere. I think that once the people has the power and has a nice strategy, well designed, to come to the government and ask, using the proper method, we know that you have this and that information, which is basically what we did in Brazil. We had solid evidence, documented evidence, that the government had been involved in some very astounding UFO research cases. And we asked them to come forward and be clear about these cases, which they couldn't deny that they have been involved with because we have documentation. And using that strategy, we succeeded in getting this information. Now, as I told you, we won't stop. We will go on. And we will report internationally in conferences such as this, as many times as necessary, what we have achieved. Every time we have a new achievement. It's not only for Brazilians, it's for worldwide. And I strongly suggest that UFO researchers in other countries all over the world do something like this. But do something now, because the truth It's not outside. It's also inside. It's in several buildings in the federal capital, United States, and in many other capitals of countries all over the world. Thank you very much.